Well, I'm going to come from behind the podium because they say people who stand behind the podium usually have something they're trying to hide. So I wanted to open myself up to you guys and allow you into my space and you allow me into your space. That would be awesome. So I'm here today to talk about growing food and this whole movement that we're all feeling. Has anybody been enjoying the conference? How have you liked it? Yeah? Awesome. You guys ready to go home and share this with everybody? Yeah. Sweet, because that's exactly what I'm going to teach you how to do today. And I'm going to start off with talking about some of the points that I found during my own conversations have been the most influential in pulling people in, have had the biggest impact. So I'm going to give you some really easy tidbits to share with people at home, as well as get you thinking about things you might be able to share from the conference. Okay, so let's go ahead. And at the end I have, I don't know if anybody was in the Prism Auditorium to see a little snippet of the trailer for our film. We have a little bit extended version at the end of this, so you'll catch that at the end. So we're going to go ahead and dive in. My name is Jessica Smith. I grew up on a farm in Virginia, and I've gone to school for sustainable living, emphasizing on living soils and living systems with Elaine Ingham. She came to my school and taught, and I've also done an eco-certified farmer program and nutritional therapy program. So these all are things that I've kind of combined in my life to try to understand each other and so I can show people the correlations. So I want to tell a story about how this all began for me. This I was raised on my grandpa's farm, single parent household, ended up on his farm and just changed my life. Right? My grandpa, he's always grown food ever since I can remember. The 6-foot-something tall dude, covered in tattoos, farming. And I looked up to him. He could do no wrong. He's still awesome. And he really has inspired me to go forward in this. And I just would follow him around and try to learn everything I could from him. It's not like he spoke a lot, but when he did speak, usually it was something worth hearing. And I just remember one Sunday evening after dinner, we were sitting on the back porch, and he farms Black Angus and also has gardens and orchards. And he was just looking out at the pastures. And of course, my normal spot is his lap. So I was up on his lap, and he just put his arm around my shoulder. And he looked out at the pastures, and I was looking out at the pastures, and he pointed out and he said, "You see all that?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "If you take care of the land, it'll take care of you." That set my whole future in motion. From then on, this is all I wanted to do. I just wanted to help people understand that just by taking care of this, it's going to give back to us and we can give to it. And that there's this relationship that can form. And that this earth that I'm standing on loves me and will take care of me and just needs me to put that love into it so we have a continuous cycle. So, of course, after high school, I was already set. I was like, I'm going to study sustainable living with Elaine Ingham and living soils and never look back, right? Just been going forward, pushing this forward, learning all that I can, and just really trying to encourage the rest of the world to also really receive this message. Also, I'll get to some of these other things that I'm involved in later, but for the next portion of my life after college, I worked with Vale Dixon, and she had just bought her land when I started working with her, and we started mixing hundreds of gallons of compost tea to apply and restore the conventional land. And then from there, I started teaching at the University of Richmond. That was an interesting story. Speaking of, spreading the message, does anybody use Facebook here? Yeah. Well, I was on Facebook one day, and I was, having one of those, quarter-life crisis, quarter-century crisis. What is the call that I want to do? And so I was on Facebook, and I was I was new to the Richmond area where I was, and I really wanted to kind of find out who was doing some cool things. So I found this guy who had kind of organized a permaculture course, right? And then I found him on Facebook, and I was like, okay, I'm going to message this guy and see what happens. So I messaged him and I was like, hey, I've seen what you were doing. I thought it was really cool. Could maybe we meet up and talk about it? And he's like, yes, let's meet up and have coffee. And I was like, great. So I go to the campus and we meet up and we go sit on the bench, right? And then I do what I normally do when I get nervous. Start nerding out about soil. So I start talking about, yeah, we can grow food in this way that'll heal the planet and all this great stuff and it'll feed people and the nutrition of food has declined. And he's like, wait. He's like, could you teach this? And I was like, you'd pay me to teach this? And he's like, yeah. Can you go home and like make some courses and teach them? I was like, sure, yes, I will. So I went home and I started making these courses, and the next thing you know, I was teaching at the University of Richmond and really trying to pass that along. They gave us plots in the school gardens, and we started utilizing some of these principles that you guys have learned at this conference and that you've learned from Dan, some other sources, Elaine, all these awesome people. What was really great is that the soil we were starting with was like awesome, right? So we had a lot of room to grow. And the whole gardens were organic. You're not allowed to use any chemicals, which was awesome. What we noticed though was we put so much effort and so much love into our gardens and so many awesome things, and we mulched and we did everything the way we should to support life. What happened was there was one day we all went out to the garden and we had like kale. And then the other plots had some cabbage heads and other brassica plants. And there was an infestation of some kind of insect that was just going through and destroying and decimating these plants. That they looked like Swiss cheese. So we were really concerned, right? So we rushed over to our plots and we looked at our kale. It wasn't even touched, right beside each other, because we were growing food for people, not insects, right? And it was at that moment I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta tell everybody about this, because this is incredible. When you see it, you're just like, wow, like just from supporting the system, it's taking care of itself. I don't have to fight anything. So needless to say, I was like, I gotta keep telling people about this and sharing. And then I also studied native pollinators and bees in college, and I created a pollinator sanctuary there. And then I was so moved to write a children's book because, as we all know, the youth is our future. And I really want to help them understand where the food on their plate comes from and how it gets to them. And I also make I just like to bring up to people, in your backyard, it's an ecosystem. And bees, they need minerals, they need water, they need sap from the plant, so you need to have something flowering. And I know all you guys are aware, but just some little patches of water with maybe a little seaweed stuck in it, and maybe some little sponges or something so that they don't drown, makes all the difference. Then I started getting involved with local urban gardeners and urban garden programs in order to teach people in food deserts how to grow their own food. So I partnered with some awesome people doing urban gardens. This is Randy Miner here. This is Lewis Ginter Botanical Garden, urban garden boot camp that we were doing. So just teaching people, we were testing the bricks of some of their leafy greens and seeing how they were doing. And really just people like this out there doing it. This is what we need to be partnering with and sharing with. And then I had like this, also on Facebook, believe it or not, there was a time where I was still having a little bit of issues in my life, like what am I doing, like how many people are in, all that kind of thing. And so I was on Facebook and I had come across this listing for a job, a virtual assistant. I was like, what's that? Let me just apply and see what happens. There's some awesome people, a person in the room that posted that, and I found it. And I figured what I have to lose, like I'll apply. I've never done any online work at all. So this is a side story to kind of show you this was like my night job. During the day I could teach about this, and then I could go home and go back to work. And this is what we really have to do to like hustle and push ourselves out there so we can do what we love. But what happened was the BFA caught wind of this, and after a couple of conversations with Dan over a dinner table, he's like, could you do our social media? And I was like, sure. Of course, yeah, I would definitely do that. So I got like a crash course into social media and started doing that, and just really having a blast doing that and spreading the word. And maybe some of you guys have seen some posts on there and commented. That's great. I love it. I love chatting with you all. But let's just dive in. That's just a little bit of my background so we can, kind of open up where we are. I just want to know who here grows food. Can you stand up, please? Can you guys stand up? I just want to give you guys all a round of applause. I am surrounded by awesome people. Anybody who is sitting down, don't worry, we all have a piece to play in this puzzle, in this game, and we are doing this together. We're all in it together. And I don't know, I think everybody wants standing up, right? Yeah. So that's incredible. You guys are superheroes because what you're doing is saving us. It's saving our communities, and it's providing food, and it's nurturing all the people around us. So thank you. I just wanted to say that. Okay, we're going to dive into content now. So I said I was going to talk about some things that I found have had the most impact in my own conversations. And I'm going to cover 3 bases. Environment, community, and human well-being. Right? Some of these things you may have heard at the conference. These are just things that I'm reinforcing have been very impactful. Am I standing in the way for anybody? No. You're not? Okay. I just want to start out with like an analogy of sinking ship. Right? Usually there's like 2 things you need to do when a ship is sinking. You need to plug the hole and bucket out the water. Well, if you just plug the hole and you don't bushel out the water, you're still in trouble. And if you just keep shoveling out the water and you don't plug the hole, you're still in trouble. And that's really where our conversation about climate change is right now. Trying to plug the hole, we still gotta bushel out the water, or else, it's gonna sink. So that's what I really want to try to help people understand, is that in addition to plugging up the hole, we have to do something about all the water in the boat, right? Or all the carbon still in our atmosphere. So when I was in college, I had a permaculture course, right? And they talk about one of the principles being that usually the solution to the problem is found in the problem. And I was under the understanding that humans were the problem. And so I was like, what do we do? Like, I'm part of the problem. And then there was a moment where I felt so empowered when I learned that. Because I was like, oh, we are the solution. We can do something. We caused this. We can fix it. We're the only ones who can fix it. So I just want to empower you guys to know that we are all the solution. And usually when there's something that you don't understand or there's a problem, just look a little bit deeper. I'm sure you'll find the light in it. So where do we start? Soil, the skin of the earth. I don't know about you guys, but something about personifying things in my experience really helps people start seeing them a little bit differently. So the more you can personify the earth and personify what it is we're doing in our practices and our gardens, it really helps people understand. You guys know that Dan loves using analogies connecting to people to plants. So this is really helpful. Right now, at Mother Nature's pace, we're building about 3 centimeters of topsoil in 1,000 years. Right? Which is fine for Mother Nature, right? She's all the time in the world. But we don't, right? So of our remaining topsoil, if we continue on our current trajectory, we only have about 60 years left of topsoil before it's gone. And I plan on being here in 60 years, and I also am committed that that's not going to happen in my lifetime. And that's not going to happen for the future generations, because I'm committed, and I really want this mission to take place. So I'm inviting all you guys to join me on this journey, as I know most of you are. And that the whole goal is to work with nature. We can understand how the earth works and speed it up. We know how to speed up the process. Just by mimicking nature, we can help make it happen faster. We can sequester carbon. We can build topsoil super fast. But we have to do it, right? Because it's not the earth that needs saving, it's us. Right? She'll keep going on with or without us. But I would love to be on that, I'd love to be part of that. So, in another sense, the soil, this is the basis of life. So that's why it's so important that we start concentrating on it more. Because over 95% of all of our food comes from the soil. And some resources say it's like 97.7%, so like 0.3% comes from the ocean. this is really critical because in the last 150 years, we've lost about half of all the topsoil on the planet. And every minute, you're losing about 30 soccer fields worth of topsoil due to our degenerative agricultural practices. This is not cool, guys. Like, we know this, and we need to educate people. This is what I'm talking about. Just to sidestep this. This is the kind of stuff that gets people thinking, which is why I'm sharing it with you. You share it like this on top of a picture on social media or with somebody in your local community, and you will get people wondering like what they can do to help. Right? So that's why this is really important. And what is happening to all this topsoil that's running off? Well, part of it's going into the air. It's off-gassing carbon from, when we till the soil over and carbon hits oxygen, it oxidizes. And so a lot of the carbon in the air came from agriculture. 44 to 57% of all the greenhouse gas emissions are from agriculture, land use, and our global food system. But the solution is found the problem. Just because these practices have caused us, we can also utilize them to turn it around, right? We can put all of that back into the soil and take it out of the atmosphere. And I know you guys heard Dan mention that we've officially passed the 400 parts per million carbon in the atmosphere. The safe level is 350. So if you think about it, here's another analogy. You like my cat. So I just want to help paint this picture for you. Say you have a pretty severely obese person walk into a physician's office, right? They're concerned about the rest of their life, the health conditions that they might be facing, and they ask the doctor if they can help them. And the doctor just points out, quite frankly, you're overweight, you need to go on a diet. And so the patient's like, okay, what do I do? And then the doctor works, and makes this whole diet plan, right? And gives it to them. But the caveat is that the diet will keep them from gaining any more weight, but they won't lose any weight. They'll stay at that level. And the patient is bewildered. Like, what are they going to do? They're still going to suffer from all these things. They might not gain weight, but they're going to stay at that current weight, right? And it's not going to bring them back to health. Again, that's where we are, right? We need to understand the recipe and the different dietary things that will help bring the earth back into balance. And that has to do with how we manage the soil, right? That's why we're on here. Okay, so let me just step over. We also need to grow food to feed the planet, to feed the soil, to feed ourselves. And according to Rodale, it only takes a quarter of the agricultural land turned regenerative to stabilize, right? So that's like the doctor's diet, right? To stabilize. But they've actually discovered that there's some practices that are even more regenerative, that sequester more carbon from the atmosphere and put it into the soil. And so the combination of this with more land in regenerative agriculture, then you can start reversing climate change, right? Because you'll start actually pulling more than is being generated. So what about our water? Soil erosion goes straight into our waterways along with all the pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, all the sides that you can think of. And for a lot of farmers that has been the case. But and fertilizers, they all end up in the waterways, right, which create dead zones. They negatively impact the marine life and the peoples that rely on them. And then there's this great thing about soil. I don't know if anybody here uses a carbon water filter in their house, but it filters out toxins. And as stewards of the land, the water that runs off of our land should be cleaner than when it came. And if we're not putting chemicals and toxins on it anyways, we're effectively contributing clean water into the system. And every increase in percent of organic carbon, 60,000 more gallons of water can be stored in your soil per acre. Right? So with all the talk of drought and all the experiences people are having with drought, this is critical. We'll have less of these kind of conditions happening and more of these kind of conditions happening, right? So really, it's about renewing our soil and helping so that we can grow food. So what is regenerative agriculture? I mentioned before that it's about working with nature, utilizing photosynthesis to help put the carbon back into the soil and draw it down from the atmosphere. And I know you guys are all familiar with this. There's so many things you can do that are regenerative to your soil, such as cover crops, minerals, compost, mulching. So many ways you can actually sequester so much more carbon and help to effectively reverse climate change. So now let's move on to grappling environments. It's just like snippets. I hope this isn't like, overly repetitive for you guys. I know you guys have had a lot input from the conference, so I'm hoping I can just like mellow it out for you, because this is really, I know it might be rudimentary level, but this is the kind of stuff that you can share with people. So I'm just trying to reinforce like really easy to share things. So through community, so by the way we grow our food, we can effectively have a happy planet and a really tight community that's super well functioning and close, and just, we need to regenerate not just our soil, but our relationships. So food deserts. Food deserts are really an area, like in urban areas within a mile, and rural areas within 10 miles, where there is no convenient or affordable or healthy fruit and vegetables or food available to people. And I think there's 29 million Americans live in food deserts. That's why community gardens, urban gardens, all this stuff is critical, because we have to help increase food security. Because a lot of these areas are lower income areas, and if you look at maps, it's very interesting to see where all the health food stores and the supermarkets are in comparison with income levels. So it's really important that we start getting food in these local communities. Of this kind of stuff, more than 15 million children live in food insecure households. That means like they might be getting food during the week at school, but it's not guaranteed that they'll get food during the weekend in between school. Right? So they either don't have good access or it's not affordable. And in 2015, 5.4 million seniors struggled to even afford food. Right? This is not acceptable for our day and age. We have so much food. It's all about distribution. So we really need to make sure we're getting these gardens in as many places as possible to help people out. And that leads me to that 1 in 6 people in America are actually facing hunger. And, yeah.
I've heard food desert a couple of times. My city is a food desert, so has anybody heard of the term food swamp?
No.
So we made up that definition. Food swamp is an area, for example, if you have a swamp around, you have water to drink of, but it's not something you want to survive from. So with these food swamps, you got food around, you got this Dunkin' Donuts, Burger King.
Right.
So it's not something that you want to survive or have your family eating, right? So there's a lot of other swamps and food deserts around. So.
Awesome, yeah, it's so true. So true.
Where is that?
On Latin? Where?
What community is that?
Springfield.
And then I have a friend named Ron in Richmond, and he's tackling the food desert situation there, and he's doing a brilliant job. And one of the things that he says is that they say knowledge is power, but I say it's not powerful unless you do something with it. And that's what I challenge all you guys. We have so much knowledge that we're gaining here. We need to make use of it and spread it. Also, I know personally how it is to feel like you can't afford food, or to not even be able to afford food. In college, I was one of those students looking for different means to help me, get some fresh food. So I would go to the store on certain days where they gave out the old produce, or I would go to the school gardens in front of my dorm and do my own plot, and people would give me food. And I got really good at wildcrafting greens. And then also I got a job at the greenhouse, and that really helped me buffer my food issue. But more so than the food was that I felt a sense that I was part of something greater. Through that whole process, I got closer to the people around me. And this is what I want to move forward to, is that purpose. In order to grow community, I think that through growing food we can do that. We can reverse societal problems through connection. And how do we help with this connection? Well, we do it by growing food, because everybody eats. This is a shared commonality that we all have, everybody has to eat. And this can melt barriers because you are coming together over one centerpiece, and that is grow food and we all eat food together, right? And that, oh man, that dissolves barriers like nothing I've ever seen. There's even been case studies that in areas where they start, putting these gardens in, is that crime rate drops. Because all of a sudden people start, looking out for their neighbors because they know them, they know their names, they know their kids, and they take more pride in their area, right? They have something beautiful to look at. And so crime effectively drops. Can you hold it to the end? Because there's a lot to move through here. I'll get back to you though.
Just a quick.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
We built a community farm in Bridgeport, Connecticut. The crime rate from 6 months before to 6 months after that farm was built dropped 42%.
Woo! That is awesome. Case in point right there, right? This stuff is beautiful what it can do. Also, bringing in children. I have a friend who does farming workshops, and he has a policy that you cannot show up to the workshop unless you bring a youth with you. Whether it's your kid, somebody else's kid, teenager, whatever, you cannot attend unless you bring a youth. And this really helps them understand how to get involved and make connections with people, with the soil, with their plants, with their food, where it's coming from. There's a really great quote that says, why try to explain miracles to your kids when you can just have them plant a garden, right? That's the most beautiful thing in my mind. Also, with kids getting involved, I know this might, not come off as the most, pleasant thing, but a lot of kids don't want to listen to their parents anyway, so it's really good to bring them to these events and let them do it themselves, right? Because it's a sense of independence and that, they have a say in what's happening and they're learning it and they're doing it themselves, and that's like really important to them. I have this friend in New York. Adam over there knows him. Adam's helping him out. He just quit his job, right? And he started farming on people's front lawns. Like, he had no land. He just started putting fires. Like, hey, you have a front lawn I should grow food on. And I asked him, like, why did you quit your job? Like, why did you do that? And he said, he was putting in pools for the 1%. And he's like, there's no purpose. And I was like, well, there's no greater purpose than growing food and feeding people and healing the planet while you're at it. So that wraps me up and brings me to human well-being. So this is the third point. Me, myself, personally, I started developing health issues after school, towards the end of school, where I thought I was eating really healthy, right? And then my teeth started falling apart. So I was like, what is going on? Like, why is this happening? I'm eating so healthy, right? Not the case. The food I was eating, even though it was fruits and vegetables, they weren't healthy. They weren't grown regeneratively. They weren't nutrient dense. I changed over, started eating nutrient dense foods, grown better, and started connecting with more local farmers and eating more mineral rich foods. My teeth started healing. So I just want to share this with people, right? But just to give you a picture of why that was all happening to me and where we currently are with our nutritional levels. Who wants to guess how many apples you have to eat today to get the same amount of iron content in one apple from 1950? And if you've seen my social media posts, don't answer. 5? Anybody else have a number? 50? 50? Well, yeah, you guys are definitely leaning towards the right end. Yes, it's 26 according to like the 1980s. Right, so I don't know if I doubt we've gotten any better, but at least 26, so an apple a day no longer cuts it. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to be eating 26 apples a day. We all know what happens when I do that. So that leads me into this chart, which I've also found to be very helpful when I'm trying to convey to people like what's happening in our system and where it came from, is the correlation between nutritional decline with agricultural practices and then the incidence of degenerative disease in our population. So on this chart here, you see the amount of foodborne minerals, and then along here you see the years, and these red lines are the mineral deficiency diseases, and these kind of like shaded areas, you can't see it that well, but this is blue and this is like purple. It really lays over when different agricultural practices were introduced. So you see, and this is from my friend August Dunning, really awesome research scientist. And these are levels. This is iron, zinc, calcium, cobalt, magnesium, copper, selenium, phosphorus. all these things. You see, like, right when we started mechanizing, which is just like using tractors and stuff like that, and getting really big, when we started doing that to farming, look what happened. This is the minerals in our food just dropped because the life in the soil started disappearing, right? Because we started tilling, and carbon started like getting out, and we started shredding up the mycelium networks that were forming, that were providing lots of minerals to our plants. And then we had ammonium nitrate, and pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides. And then when we got to GMOs and glyphosate, it's just started skyrocketing. Asthma, autoimmune conditions, all this stuff. Obesity is rocketing out there. It just really correlates very interesting to me, where you wonder what's happening. It's the agricultural practices are degenerating our soil, which is degenerating our food, which is causing us to degenerate. It's all connected. And right here in this zone, you have a lot of issues because the nutrition that is available in our food, which is like this, we're not like able to access it as much because a lot of the minerals are binded up from chemicals that we're ingesting. The good thing is that because we know this, now we can move up from it, right? You can't like really fix things unless you know they exist, So we have a lot of work to do, but it can be done. And just by growing your own food in your backyard, by knowing a farmer, all this stuff, their food is way better than this. This is just our conventional standards, so this is not like all the food in the world, thankfully. So that's why it's our responsibility to help and just inform people and help encourage people and help really support the people who are growing this type of food that's awesome and healing in medicine. Does anybody know what the word or the suffix side means?
I'm sorry, I did some shout-outs.
Yeah.
To kill, right?
Yeah, it means to kill. And so in this type of agriculture, what we're doing is we're trying to support life. We're not trying to kill. When you start killing things off, a lot of these things are not very selective, right? You start killing off life in your soil. And in effect, it's passing along through the system. And it's not supporting anybody, really. We're kind of over the whole stages of where, gardening is a battle and we're fighting everything. We don't have to do that to work with nature. So just, educational points for you to share with people. And in the U.S., glyphosate has increased from 1987 to 2012 by just a little bit. 11 million to 300 million pounds per year. That's mainly because they genetically modified the plants to be able to handle it, so they can just drench it. And you gotta wonder if there's residue in your food from putting that much on there. And they don't really have like an ongoing monitoring kind of setup for this, but it has been found in human urine, blood, and breast milk. And we all know what we learned. This stuff causes issues with fertility, gut microbiome problems, DNA damage, and all these things leading to autoimmune diseases, autism, cancer, Parkinson's disease. It's really like a lot of these things were just almost non-existent, until a lot of this stuff has been introduced into the system. So we can change this. This is not like, potting just cats. They started, we fed them awful food and their ability to reproduce started declining, and then you started feeding them good food, and then a few generations they were back to like optimal health. That's what we can do. Every moment you take a bite, you have a choice to whether you're building better copies of yourself or, less, awesome copies of yourself. So we have a choice, and we need to educate people that they have a choice too. Okay, I love this one. So this is another benefit for your well-being of growing food. It's called garden therapy, and I just want to tell another little story. I love telling stories, you guys. I hope that's okay. I know that might be okay, right? Because you guys have just been drilled with knowledge, right? So I can tell stories. Well, I was in British Columbia hitchhiking. It's kind of what you do in college, you do that kind of thing. And got picked up by this one lady, and she was a night nurse at a prison nearby, and she was on her way home. And this woman, let me tell you, super mom. Like, oh my gosh, this woman is incredible. she was telling me how she wanted her kids to have access to really good food. So she started growing a school garden at her kids' school. And what started happening was amazing. What they noticed was the kids who were in detention and who were misbehaved, they just started sending them out to her because they didn't know what to do with them, right? If they weren't getting better sitting them in the room by themselves, like, you know. So they started sending these troubled kids out to this lady. And as soon as they got outside, they were completely calm, peaceful, beautiful, vibrant, like, focused kids that could learn, that wanted to learn, that were excited. And she was like, I didn't do anything, I just was out there with them. They just started, you know, it just happened on its own. And that is the power of what gardening can do. We need to bring our kids out there, you know? Maybe it's not natural to sit them in a confined area for like, I don't know, however many, 6 hours a day, however insane it is, and just stand in front of them and put words on the wall. That's not how humans as like a race and a species like were meant to be, right? So maybe it's time to start thinking some of these things and integrate this more into our school system. And then, I know for myself, has anybody else in here also had this experience where you go out to the garden and your stress decreases?
Of course.
Yeah.
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 No, we put in the, how do you feel when we're putting in your garden?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm generally a pretty happy person to begin with, but I'm an entrepreneur in a couple of businesses, and so stress is always there. In the 2 or 3 weeks that we were building this garden for our online course that we did, I wasn't going to just stand on camera like I do all the work, so you know, I jumped in and I helped build this garden, and I got to tell you, it was the happiest I've been in a while. Again, I'm pretty happy to begin with, so you couldn't stress me out in fact. It was amazing. It was amazing. So yeah, I never looked back.
Monica?
Do you have a second or?
Go for it.
I worked in horticultural therapy for actually a hospital that had a greenhouse on premises for that specific purpose. And all of the residents, it only worked with resident inpatients that had to live there. All of the residents that came to the horticultural therapy, they had horrible problems. They were all so happy. It was just really lovely thing to see in action.
Awesome, thank you. That's awesome, I love that. Because yeah, we are meant to live close to nature. We are nature. I don't know, we got this thing in our mind where we think like outside is outside and it's like separate from us and like that's nature and I'm like in my own space, but we are nature, we're not separate. Also, if there's actually some evidence to back up why we feel so happy when our hands are in the soil and we're outside in the garden, we learned about the soil microbiome, we learned about the human microbiome. Well, it turns out there's a specific species of bacteria called MPK, and when that comes into contact with us as humans, it triggers our brain to create serotonin. You know, the happiness, like, buzz that we get from being out there. Because the soil, like, we are supposed to be, like, connected. Nature doesn't make mistakes or have accidents. Everything is designed for a specific reason. And that's because we're supposed to be out there touching the earth. It's called the golden bacillus. I call it the golden bacillus of happiness. You know? So this is what it looks like. Isn't that so lovely? Digging your hands in soil. I know it's covered with microbes, so it's one way to keep ourselves healthy besides the immune enhancements that it gives children. Has anybody's mom ever told them just to go outside and get some fresh air when you're just like not feeling good, or tell you to just open a window? Oh, yeah, it's true because it works. Because has anybody here heard of earthing or grounding? Mm-hmm. Yeah, same concept. Negative ions that reduce inflammation. They also have an antidepressant effect on us. So good. Take your shoes off when you're gardening. Don't be afraid. You know, that's one of the beauty parts of not using chemicals and toxins is that you don't have to be afraid of touching anything. Right? So go ahead, touch it. So that wraps up my piece on talking points. Right now, we're going to get into how you spread that message. And this is where, you know, I am going to mention social media. I know. I'm ready. Don't jump on me. Because it is a tool, right? So I just want to give you guys a heads up that I will be talking about social media. But we're going to first start off with some tools of the trade at the ground zero level, and I call it ground zero because it's about really on the ground in your community, how to go ahead and put yourself out there and connect to people on a one-to-one basis or in groups. So this is a direct relationship route. So this can come in the form of community gardens, school gardens, church gardens, backyard gardens, just any space that's available with extra people that want to get involved and that will benefit. These are places where you can go ahead and put in gardens to help teach people how to do this and help grow food in your area. So this is one method and one technique. Also, linking up farmers markets, food banks, food co-ops, all these different places are great places to share your message. Share your message with your community. And because you're going to have a lot of people at these places who are interested or who need it. Then the next tool is to teach, organize, and attend your community classes, workshops. Anybody been to one of Dan Kittredge's workshops? If you haven't, it's a good idea. And you can also organize them in your community and help bring people together like that. You can start a local BFA chapter. That's what I did. I was new to the area, and I just wanted friends. There were people I could nerd out with about soil and eat good food with. And that was the whole point. And from that, I gained some lifelong friends and relationships, and we learned so much from each other. We brought in speakers, right? We brought in all kinds of people. We shared our own knowledge with each other. So this is a great strategy. Connect with your extension office. Usually they have awesome courses going on. If they don't, put yourself out there. Teach something. The best way to learn is to teach. And this is a great way to go ahead and find your tribe. Or you can go all in. I'm sure several of you are, and just start your own whole regenerative farm. Be an example. Be a light into the world. Right? Now, I'm going to move into the tech-savvy stuff. So you either start tech-savvy or you become tech-savvy when you dive in. Regardless, you're going to become tech-savvy. Right? It's just a matter of you being open-minded and utilizing the people around you who know more than you do to go ahead and help get you started. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, right? So some options for this, photography, music, poetry, books, all this kind of stuff. It doesn't even have to be digital. Digital just helps spread it really far, right? Because I call these platforms because you have an audience. Whether it's small or large, you're going to have an impact. You're going to have an impact in somebody's life, right? Get social, right? This is what I'm talking about. Blogging, Facebook groups, create groups, join groups. They have so many resources. I was speaking with a lady today. I was speaking with Ann Berkeley. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I didn't get that name. But she was talking about gardeners just sharing knowledge amongst each other. You can do that on these platforms, right? Join like a group in your area. Start Instagramming. Start photographing when you're out there pulling. You have a CSA, and you can do a little clip of you pulling the carrot. People love that stuff. This is a great way. They want to be connected to where their food is coming from. They want to see the process. Snapchat, for anybody who's really interested in videos, what we're learning is it's about connection, right? Also with these platforms, I know they seem really intimidating, and for anybody in here who's familiar with these platforms, there's also tools to make your life a lot easier. So instead of trying to go and post every single day, you could pre-make your posts and you could schedule them, right? So it does not have to take over your life. This is just your way to spread the message and to spread the knowledge that you have with the world, because it needs it. And a lot of our future farmers are actually behind screens, right? So that's where you have to get to. And then as you learn to teach, there's these things called infographics. These are highly viable content. If anybody is interested in spreading the message and getting knowledge out there, these are awesome to use when you're learning something, to go ahead and create it as you're learning, so that it's a great teaching tool. These are very digestible tidbits of knowledge that people can look at and be like, whoa, this is powerful. Video. This is the future. This is where everybody's going. Everybody is doing video now. And it does not have to be complicated. You can start a YouTube channel, you can go live on social media, it's simple. You can host and teach webinars, you can do video podcasts and interviews. Share with people. It's a gift economy. The more it gives to us. Then there's crowdfunding platforms. Basically, you have an idea People like your idea, they want to support you, they give you money, and then your idea becomes a reality. And these are great ways to create community and buzz about anything. They have even one for like farmers specifically that's called Barn Raiser, you know, where people just want to help you. So that was the painful part, right? Talking about social media. What I want to talk about are some angles and techniques to take when you're creating this content, whether you're sharing it digitally or in person. But more, it's a little bit centered on digital, because in person it's easier to be you, but digitally you have to really work on how you're coming across. So what people want is human. You know, it's all about connection. Just be human. Make yourself human-centered, right? It's really easy to take pictures of carrots. You know, this is great, this is cool. Take a picture of a person with a carrot. All of a sudden people's interests are piqued. You know, who is that person? What are they doing? You're relating. You know, it's a level of being able to relate. You see in this picture, this is very, you know, it's a person, right? And you're just drawn to it. Like what's happening behind him, there's fields, there's something on his shoulder, it looks like a pig or something. You know, it's just interesting, right? And also, they want stories. People love stories. People remember stories, people don't usually remember like random snippets, you know, or even important information, right? You might not remember what I said, but you're gonna remember how I said it, right? You might remember my stories. And so, tell your story, tell your neighbor's story, tell the local story. Everybody just wants stories and they want to know why it's important to you. So, other techniques and angles. People love seeing your process and your journey, right? So, document. Because one day you're going to do something like super great and you're going to be kicking yourself in the butt because you don't even have records of how you got there. And that's what everybody wants. They want to know, what did you do to get there? You know, there's things that I've done, I'm like, darn it, I didn't take a picture, I didn't document it, I didn't take my results and put them here. Like, document it because it could help somebody else, right? And that's what people want. This is, just a side note, this is my best friend right here. He gave his bracelet. He's the future. He's one of the main reasons I do this. Yeah.
100% fact right there.
Yeah, because you have that child in your life, even though he's not my kid. He's Joe's kid. I don't have kids, but this kid, like, he just makes my heart warm, right? This is what makes me get up in the morning. I'm like, I'm so excited. I'm going to do something awesome for the world today. Whatever it is I can do, small, large, whatever. Just put myself out there. I get up, I start the day on a good note. Also, people on the internet, like, trying to figure out things. Has anybody ever Googled anything? How do you know? It's part of my life. That's how I've basically done everything. So people are going to be looking for how to do this. So if you're creating videos and DIYs and you're sharing your skills, you're helping so many people. I was asked to talk a little bit about what I was doing myself. You know, somebody asked me where I was from, and I'm between New York and Virginia, but in reality, I have a school bus that I'm converting into a house, and I would not be able to do that without YouTube. Like, that is what's making this possible. And so for people starting a garden, share what you're doing. People learn so much from the internet. Share things, food for thought for people, motivational quotes, any eye-opening statistics that you find. Look at this. See today as the beginning of the future, not the tail end of the past. Deepak Chopra. And what did they do? They took a pretty picture, they took an inspiring quote, laid it over, put it out there. Somebody's world has changed. Somebody's having a better day just from reading this. You guys, anybody that's helping you with this is the kind of thing. You just look through and you're like, whoa, this is so true. Like, yeah, I think you want to do something good today, you know? Just this kind of stuff can really help encourage people, right? Also, if there's an event, like this event, right? Do some coverage, share your experience of the event because not everybody can be everywhere. So people really appreciate it when you share with them what you've learned or gained from your experience, or they might be like, oh, I think I want to go to that conference or that event next year, right? Because this person's feedback was so awesome, or not awesome. You know, you decide what you want to do. Also, get your kids involved because internet is intuitive. I say that kind of jokingly, but like, their synapses in their brains are still forming, right? So they're still taking in. Anybody know Pokemon? You ever wonder how your kids know like how many thousand Pokemon names and what they do and who they are? It's because they're taking in things, they're soaking it up. That's how internet and stuff is done. That's why you should get them in garden, because this stuff just sticks so well. Also, if you don't really want to get into it, just hand your kid the phone and be like, hey, take this, record me, I'm going to go out in the garden and do something. Get your kids involved, they love that, you know? And, or if you don't have a kid who even wants to get involved, or you don't have kids, find a friend who loves doing video and photography and just partner with them, like I did.
BorrowAKid.com.
Yeah, is that a real thing? Just made it happen. So, I just want to touch base about a little bit of furthering my story so you see how I came to this. All the stuff that I just shared with you guys is from my own personal experience, process that I've gone through, because I was working as a virtual assistant, what is it, virtual ninja, is my official title. And, you know, I was just teaching all this stuff and doing that during the day because it's just my passion. And I really loved the Rebel Hill Tribe, who I was working with, which is Joe and Michael. And I really loved it. I was learning so much. I could not have learned hardly any of this stuff or be nearly as supported if it wasn't for them. And what happened was I was working with them for like a year and a half. And then I went up to New York from Virginia, where Joe was. I was going to meet him in person. I've been working with him for a year and a half and never met in person. So I go to the door, I knock. He opens the door, his whole family, they're so warm and welcoming. They're like going to feed me. I'm like, this is awesome. And so I just started talking with Joe, you know, do what I normally do when I get nervous. So I'm learning about soil, you know, talking about how we can save the planet and really help heal people. And what happened was, within about 20 minutes, he was like, stop. Let's go on Facebook Live, right? Facebook Live. And let's just tell the world what you just told me. And inside I was like, oh my gosh, I have to get on camera. I don't know if I can do this. He's, oh, no, I don't know. And then outside I was like, yeah, sure. I'll do it. You know what? I crushed it. Right? You guys all crush it. And just crushing it, when I say that, it just means like, give it your all. Because people feel that. You know, they feel the genuineness. Don't worry about scripting. Don't worry about that. Just get out there and be yourself, and people love it. Right? So this is where we are now. Basically, I met Joe. We started filming something called the Garden Series, which has Dan Kittredge, Will Allen. It's like a free webinar series, just ideas of what you guys could do. And at the same time, we filmed this whole online course called the Nourishing Backyard Garden Formula, from start to finish, from my experience teaching at the University of Richmond, things that I think would help people. You know, and also things that I saw in our own garden plots and our own experience that have proven benefits. Like, we did not have insect trouble, right? I do not want gardening to be this super intimidating, stressful event, right? I want it to be easy for people, and there's so much information on the internet that I wanted to try to bring all my experience and my things that I've seen work the best into one place. And that's what you can do for people. And then we started on a road trip and started a documentary, because Joe makes documentaries. And he's like, yeah, I get this message out the world. I was like, you can help me? He's like, yes, let's megaphone this. So we went on a road trip, went to Will Allen, went to Dan Kittredge's farm, got to hang out and really dive into some of their expertise, because we wanted to capture it to share with the world, right? Which is why you guys are all here. And now the journey even continues. We are in post-production, we filmed everything, and it's just, life is awesome, you know? When you're really doing what you love, things happen, right? Put yourself out there, try something new, just keep your mind open and beautiful things will happen. So before I end and go into the trailer, I just want to leave you guys with a challenge, right? I would love to see if all of you in here would just take something that you've learned from this conference, some little snippet, something that had made you be like, whoa, that's crazy, right? Just take that, either tell somebody at home, right? Tell somebody about it. Tell somebody in your community. Teach somebody something. Or if you do social media, go on social media. post it, do something, just share it, right? Because if we all just leave this conference and we don't tell anybody about it, you know, we're just hoarding that knowledge, you know, and really how much benefit it's going to do if we all just tell the world about it. So that's my challenge to you guys, is to take something you've learned from this conference and really help share that with everybody around you and any audience you have access to. Because we are the future, we're in this together, and together we can make it happen. So thank you guys, I'm going to dive in. This is a completed end, that's a fake end, haha. So I wanted to share with you guys we just launched a Kickstarter like 2 days ago. So I want to show you guys our Kickstarter video, and it includes our trailer. But why I want to show it to you is because it includes like a message and some more awesome footage of people in a documentary. So it's called Grow Food. It's not just a film, it's a call to action. And I hope you guys enjoy. Let's see. Probably just,
By the way, that challenge you just gave me, I just put it out to my youth on my group chat.
Yeah.
bonus points! Awesome. Cool.
The nutrition in our food has dropped nearly 70% since 1950. Less nutrition, less flavor, and more toxins in our environment. Hi, I'm Joe, and I'm a filmmaker.
And I'm Jessica, and I grow food.
So we're making this documentary because after over a year working with Jessica virtually, finally met in person, she came over to our house, and she started talking about growing food and farming, and within about 20 minutes, my mind was blown. That's because the information she shared with me, I knew could do nothing less than save humanity.
The air, the water, the soil, hundreds of scientists saying tonight it is visual proof of global warming and what we all have to do next.
As climate change affects air pollution, scientists estimate 60,000 people could die in the year 2030 if it's not addressed.
13 million children in the United States of America, one of the wealthiest nations in the world, struggle with hunger. That's nearly 1 in 6 kids, either without access to healthy meals or sometimes without anything to eat at all.
The decline in nutrition in our food also correlates perfectly with things like adult and childhood obesity, cancer, asthma, autoimmune, and other chronic diseases.
The mineral and nutrition decline in our food also has the same root cause as water pollution and climate change: soil. The way the land has been farmed since the 1950s has had more consequences on our health and environment than many are willing to admit. The minerals in our food come from the soil. If the minerals are not in the soil, they cannot possibly be in our food. Humans need about 56 different elements to be healthy. So why are most farmers only using about 3 to 5 different elements on their lands? Again, if it's not in the soil, it's not in our food. Another unfortunate consequence of those fertilizers is that they run off the land and end up in our waterways, polluting and creating dead zones.
We've learned the importance of the gut microbiome in humans. Turns out, plants need a healthy microbiome also to get the nutrients they need from the soil.
The fertilizers, chemicals, and degenerative farming practices of today do not support healthy soil ecosystems, and thus our plants are weak. Instead of trying to grow healthier plants, farmers apply pesticides and other toxins to fight the disease. So in effect, we are getting sick plants covered with toxins sent to our grocery stores to feed ourselves and our families. Healthy, living, mineral-rich and carbon-rich topsoil is the key to healthy plants, healthy people, and a healthy planet. When plants are healthy, they actually build soil by taking in carbon dioxide in their leaves, turning it into sugar and other carbon-based compounds.
and pumping that into the soil into a stable form of carbon. If we had enough farmers and backyard gardeners farming in a regenerative manner, it would only take 5 to 7 years to bring carbon levels in the atmosphere back to pre-industrial revolution levels.
Not to mention, healthy soil actually filters and stores more water, clean water, and more water to offset droughts. Healthy plants also generate more food that has more nutrition, which is great since the population is obviously increasing.
And growing locally ensures more people have access to fresh food. All of these problems we are facing today solved by one action: growing food. Growing food is a way that regenerates rather than depletes.
This documentary has one big idea. By growing food, it helps solve most of the world's problems. And the mission of this film is to prove it. But we need your help.
This film not only provides evidence, but also resources for you to be part of the solution.
Check out the trailer and choose one of the awesome rewards below. And please contribute today.
And thank you so much for being part of the solution.
To fundamentally change the system, we need about 50 million people going in their backyards, backyards, and taking responsibility for their own food production. So a lot of the new farmers that come into the business, they think they have passion, but they haven't been tested.
I didn't see it coming because there were so many other times that I wanted to quit. I was way down. Pain is a good thing. If it wasn't for that pain, it wouldn't have gotten me to this.
I want to grow food for the masses, good food, local food, organically grown, natural food. It shouldn't be limited to people with money.
If we truly do want to heal ourselves and our families and our culture and our planet, it's incumbent on us to get a little bit closer to life.
A friend of mine had a paperweight on her desk that said, "What would you do if you knew you could not fail?" And I thought, I would farm.
I think that concludes my presentation. I just have, I think we have some time. I may have finished like way early, I don't know. But I would like to open it for any questions that anybody might have.
First of all, can we just take this for a round of applause?
For like spending time with me during this and doing all the amazing things that you're doing for the planet. So I want to thank you, and really, if there's any way we can help support you, like let me know, because that's why we're here. And if you have a message you want to get out there and you need help spreading it, we can help you too. Cool. Any questions? Here, at the end.
I don't know what your feeling about this is, but the single most important fact in all of this seems to me to be that many people don't support organic agriculture or regenerative agriculture or all those kinds of approaches, because they think that if we did that, people would go hungry, right? People in developing countries or wherever it is would starve to death if you buy organic produce. And my opinion is that that's the single most important fact that has to be conveyed, because nobody wants food that's sporadic, right? Nobody wants food that causes all this local damage and problems to rivers and so on and so forth. But if you notice on the websites of Monsanto or Bayer or all their friends, the very first thing they bring up, right, is that we need to do this in order to feed the world. Right? That's the big story, right? And the single most important barrier for our being successful is to break that myth, right? Because it's a total myth. It's absolutely the most bogus thing ever, right? But so what I share with people is that you must share that story, right? You must, first you must figure out for yourself that it's a myth, right? And understand that totally. But you also have to tell other people. Right? Exactly. They have to share it. And if you have if you own a website or you do anything on social media or whatever, you should have that somewhere on your site. Probably the first thing that people read should be that fact, right? Because that's the killer thing, right? Because most people are moral. Right? They're not doing things for money. Exactly. They're doing things because they believe in it. And if they don't believe that organic agriculture can feed the world, they will not support it, no matter how much they like it. Anyway.
No, I think that's great. That's a beautiful point. And it's just something also for us all to think about. Is there any way that any of us can share that with our people? Because he's so right. There's a misconception out there that's been paid for, right? They've paid for that misconception to take place. So really it's about us just setting an example, right? When we're sharing, share how much greater yields we're getting. Because it's totally a myth. And I know that you were raising it, and then I'll get over to you.
Did you put a website up there that's not the Grow Food Film?
No, it's just growfoodfilm.com. Okay. Yep. Back.
There's a UN report that came out about 3 years ago that a lot of us know about. You can find it pretty easily that says that diversified small-scale farming is the only way that you can do that. So if you have that as a link and a tool you can share with people.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, that would be a great thing to share. Was there someone? But you
just kind of give you a little bit of information that YouTube may want to think about. In Texas, which is a big agricultural state, cattle and stuff, you see a lot more now of the state trying to go to no-till and growing. You have the city of Austin, the capital, that have revitalized and started doing a lot of community gardens. You can rent places. But when I say the state, I'm talking about not just our ag life that's out at A&M. We're talking about our parks and wildlife that are getting involved. We went to an open ranch, 77 ranch, that they run cattle. But the Budweiser beer is interested in what they do because they get their water from there, and their water is pure from that ranch than it is from the reservoir. That's going to deal. So I kind of open it up to you guys to think about this. Is you might want to look at some of the other states that these states now are actually going into and trying to do the no-till and doing the cover crops and trying to revitalize back our soil to those points. And the communities are trying to do that. Now we're from San Antonio. San Antonio is not doing that.
There you go.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to go up the road. We got our capital that's doing these things. So I just kind of want to throw that out to you guys, but there are state levels that are trying to push the message that you're trying to push as well, and they're investing a lot of resources in doing this.
That's great, thanks.
That's so awesome, yeah, thank you for having that. Is there anybody else? Yeah.
Hi, this is great. I appreciate, this approach and what you're trying to get to and get the message out. And I want to mention though that I live in Ohio, kind of at the eastern edge of the farm belt, corn belt, the soy belt, the big ag belt, and that extends for quite a ways. So I'm very concerned about that. I'm concerned about the world and changing ag everywhere. But one of my big projects is to find ways to work on getting change happening on large-scale damaged farms. And agriculture, is a driving force. Part of that is nutrition. Part of that is climate change. As farms can change the climate, you go out on a field that has vegetation, you are cooler than if you have a bare ground that's absorbing light and turning it into heat instead of evaporating and cooling. But anyway, there's all those informational things that you were talking about earlier that tie into that. And nutrition is a big one with people. But with farmers, I learned by going around and just going to county fairs and listening, not necessarily meeting farmers so much, but paying attention, is that they do have hearts. Their families are important, or else they wouldn't. 90% of them you'll find in the show barns when their kids are showing their pigs. And that's what you're going to see. And so the families are important. And they do care because they eat differently than what they grow, and many of them want to change, but there's some constraints, and the constraints are one, we talked about it earlier in some of the discussion, culture. Another big one is crop insurance. So policy is part of that, but organizations are finding that, you know, if they're trying to get better minerals and nutrients, that they can have their own crop insurance and support farmers that are doing better, and they're not going to have to pay much because they're have the cover crops, and which is the thing that is kind of needed, I think, for most of these farms. If they can get some switch to pasture, I don't know, that's not a hard one. Yeah. But going from corn and soy to and that's no-till, adding cover crops, and the culture and farm bill or crop insurance are holding that back. But there are things we can do to support. So where's their 401ks going? Where's the investments going for retirement funds are huge, and where are institutions and their endowments and things like that. So what are we investing in? And we're divesting from Exxon, right? But what are we putting it into? And we go into agriculture to support. I think there's a model I have in my head. I'd love to discuss it sometime. It'll take a few minutes, but I'll pass unless it comes to that. But I think that we can do bridge loans, which aren't very popular in financial circles, but I think there's a way to collateralize part of the farms to get that to happen, to get them over that hump, 3 to 5 year hump of where they're not as productive and they're struggling and they're trying to figure out how cover crops can work to help them. That one step covers the ground year round. It's a huge benefit for all of the stuff we've been talking about, and it reduces the pesticide and fertilizer loads that we're seeing. So those are a number. You can be creative because there's a lot of things out there. There's a lot of ways that we can help large-scale damaged farm systems to turn it around.
Yeah, putting the support systems, people thinking, people supporting them, people who are consulting with large-scale farmers. It's all very much needed, for sure. Does anybody else have anything? Yeah.
Can you talk about the series that you guys created online about who the target is for that, or maybe some of the info that is?
The garden series, the webinar one? Yep. So do you want to?
Yeah, sure. The webinar series, it's 5 webinars, I think. I think we have the 6th one in there, but.
Webinars plus the supercharger garden bonus.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So we interviewed 5 different people. It was, like you said, Dan Kittredge, Will Allen, people like that. And those are free to watch. You can go on to rebelhealthtribe.com and click Garden Series. You can watch those for free. And those are geared probably more towards newer farmers, gardeners, backyard gardeners, that type of thing. But it does get, we did through Dan, so obviously it gets pretty deep. It gets pretty heavy, yeah. So there's some really good stuff that even experienced farmers and gardeners can absolutely take away from that. So that's the garden series that we have. Then we did the course, which Jessica talked about. Again, geared more towards backyard gardeners. One of our big goals is to bring new people into the fold instead of just speaking to other farmers. We want to speak to people who are on the edge, and that's where you guys come in too. We all have a lot more power than I think people realize. Yeah. So the Nursery Backyard Garden formula is, again, trying to bring more people into the fold, trying to get more people to grow food. Same thing. Documentary is, how many more people can we empower to grow food? And how many more people can you empower to grow food? We have a lot of power, way more power than people realize. This is new TV. This is to the TV what TV was to AM radio. How many people listen to AM radio anymore? I do sometimes too, actually. But right, this is the TV. The difference is the barrier to entry is 0. Everyone can put on a show. On their phone, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, and get traction and have a message.
Joe's son has his own show called Adventure Mason. Literally, he makes his own shows. Yeah. So you guys can check that out to Adventure Mason.
Yeah, exactly.
I told you, I love this TV. So awesome. Yeah. Is there anybody that does you? Yeah.
I
feel like I have a really easy time portraying the message when I'm directly talking to people, but I really struggle with social media because I just don't like it. And, but I know, like, I recognize the importance of it. I just, like, what are the resources I can do? Like, should I just hire that out? Or at some point should I just, because I saw the one slide and you're like, you just have to get savvy with it, or I forget what the direct.
Yeah, well, it's basically, yeah, you either start savvy or become savvy, but really it's like, do you have the means to, like, you know, hire
I have
somebody
a
out?
phone, I can take pictures, I'm pretty good at that, but
So
like.
what's the thing that you're doing? What is it? Is it CSA? Is it a farm?
I have a farm and then a farm stand. Probably going to try to get into like wholesaling mulches and compost as well.
Okay.
So what are you struggling? You're struggling with doing this? You're just talking to the camera?
Yeah.
It's awkward.
That and,
It totally is.
And then doing it like in a stylized way that is like engaging.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. If it's out of your comfort zone, that's okay.
Yeah.
And it's going to be in some people's comfort zone and out of some people's comfort zone. Think about how bad you want to spread your message, and then do it. Like, so you could do it this way. You don't have to go live. Just hit record on your phone and do it. And if it sucks, don't put it up. You know,
you can delete it.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, so just sit with it and decide how far out of your comfort zone you want to go.
Yeah,
And
and
do it.
in the future, if you have an intern, somebody who wants to learn from you,
Yeah.
just like give them the phone or to like be like, you know, would you like to do on social media and we'll trade food, you know? Or, you know, if you notice people taking pictures while you're at the market, be like, could you send me that picture, please? You know, is it possible for you to share that with me so I can share it with people? You know, so just some of these ways to utilize the resources around you too to make it less burden for you. And besides doing it while you're out in the field, I mentioned that there's certain like tools you can use to pre-schedule things. So
What would be this tool?
Hootsuite, Buffer,
Sorry, what was that first?
Hootsuite, like an owl, Hootsuite, S-U-I-T-E, Buffer, B-U-F-F-E-R, this one. And then there's something for Instagram, which if I would look into it, called Grum, G-R-U-M. That goes to your Instagram, which normally they can't do. So that takes off. But these are just things like if you want to get deeper with your messaging and creating graphics, or you just have a whole bunch of pictures from everything that you've done, and you want to create like a whole campaign, like a whole series of posts, and you want to just pre-schedule them and just let them go do their thing.
Yeah.
These things are very helpful for that. And then it takes some pressure off of you. So while you're in the field, you're just like, yeah, I just want to do a video real quick. It's not pressure because you already have content coming out. So this is just like icing on the cake that people get to be out there with you.
We're gonna add to that. Like for me, I weighed out everything. I don't spend a lot of time on computers. The more time you spend on something, you get a lot faster and more efficient. And there are so many millennials, whatever, people that have grown up on phones and on computers and they're all looking for something to do it. And I know probably a dozen that also do that and also do social media for people. It is really inexpensive for me. I totally hire it out. And it's like $30 a month, and I can give them any message, I can send them photos, any ideas, and they'll put it together. And they're so much more efficient and cohesive, and it makes sense because they do it for a dozen people, and it takes them 2 hours a day. And they're actually, it's almost like another part of the economy that's developing. People doing that for you. You got to figure out what makes sense for you. But for me, it's not worth my time to sit there and do it.
But that's perfect.
Yeah.
You said you're really good one-on-one. So do it one-on-one and have somebody hold the phone and capture that.
I just want to say your shirt is amazing.
I was just going to ask the website for the webinar series again.
Rebel Health Tribe. So rebel as in rural rebels because we grow food. Rebelhealthtribe.com.
Okay, thanks.
It should be at the top of the page.
Yep.
And there's the guy who's an extra credit.
So on the slide you had in the garden therapy one, all of my youth are from high school and middle school, and some of them struggle sometimes with their work. they come up to me like, Brandon, I'm failing my class, I can't do nothing. And I'm like, sure. But last week you just planted this pepper and look, it's still growing. So you're actually doing greater things. Don't worry, just because you fell now doesn't mean you gotta give up. You're actually doing better things out here, feeding people. You're actually running markets. You're helping people what they should eat. So garden therapy is an awesome way to, just relax. But as soon as you put your hands down here, you're like, hey, I'm doing it for the cause. I'm actually doing something for the better future.
Awesome.
And can I do like a high five for that?
Yeah, and can we get your contact info also? and we'll get your contact info also. We want to find out more about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely want to find out more about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Cool, I think that's a wrap, everybody. Thank you guys so much. Oh yeah, also, order Kickstarter, if anybody's interested in these kind of shirts that we have, it's in #iCarlFood. On our Kickstarter, it will tell you more how to get one of these. If you're interested, I just think they're cool.
Yep.
Yeah.